Unlock amazing health after 60. 8 surprising carbs to expose and transform your life forever. Ruth Johnson sat at her kitchen table, hands trembling slightly as she glanced at the glossy flyer laid out before her. The headline seemed to mock her as it flashed in the morning light. Unlock amazing health after 60 health? She was now defined by a health scare that felt like 50 tons of bricks crashing on her entire world. She'd spent years nurturing her family with home-cooked meals, traditions steeped in butter and love, and now was that very love slowly undoing her? Each cherished recipe, like her mouth-watering potato salad, now twisted into the face of her anxieties. The aroma of the summer barbecues replaced by questions of whether she was serving love or poison. Days passed, but Ruth felt stuck, caught in the whirlpool of nostalgia and dread. With her body whispering warnings, shortness of breath, tightness in the chest, she hesitated to embrace the notion that she must make changes. Every potluck was a reminder of her heritage, of the laughter echoing around her home, anchored in macaroni and cheese, greasy lasagnas, and comforting pies. What if I lose it all? She grappled, questioning whether cutting back on the carbs meant severing ties to memories and her family's identity. She felt like she was at a crossroads, confronting the fear of risking their love for the sake of fleeting health. As if sensing her inner turmoil, Sam Brooks, her retired neighbor, the town's beloved nutritionist, was the unlikely lifeline Ruth needed. Their conversations started as trivial exchanges over garden fences, yet they deepened into discussions that sometimes left her raw, as he spoke about his own regrets of lost health through self-neglect. Ruth, he encouraged softly, balancing tradition with nourishment isn't the end of your family values. It can be their evolution. But step by step, she resisted, her heart and mind locked in a desperate tug-of-war between salt-laden dishes of her past and the fear of health ramifications looming over her future. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. As she prepared to put a new twist on her famous lasagna, a recipe now laid out with quinoa instead of pasta, her breath came in shallow gasps. Could my family still love me if I change what made our holiday dinners special? The irrationality of that notion twisted her stomach like undercooked noodles. Emily, her daughter, had always been the heart of their family gatherings. Would she understand that this was about preserving Ruth? About redefining love in a healthier light? The thought of confronting her in front of the extended family terrified her, yet she couldn't turn back now. The pressure mounted, filling every crevice of her mind as she set the kitchen stage. Could she juggle the urgency of her health with the expectations of those she loved? As she gathered her ingredients, an unexpected visitor knocked on the door. Old Mr. Pritchett from 2 doors down, reminiscing about the dinners they shared. The kindness etched in his smile flooded her with memories of togetherness, triggering thoughts of acceptance, confusion washing over her. Could memories and nostalgia hold the keys to acceptance? Could she thread all facets of her life into one beautiful tapestry without losing what was so deeply hers? The moment of truth was fast approaching. The Sunday dinner loomed just hours away. Ruth's heart raced as she realized that the answer might not lie in the lasagna at all, but in the stories shared around the table that night and the love that never truly changed. Ruth held her breath as she adjusted the oven temperature. The quinoa lasagna bubbled gently, a stark contrast to the heavy dishes she had served for years. Every sound in the kitchen felt amplified, each tick of the clock a reminder of the impending dinner. Doubts crowded her mind, wrapping around her like an unwelcome shroud. Would her family taste the difference? Would they reject her attempt at healthier choices? Lost in thought, she barely noticed as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows in her kitchen. Memories flooded back. Her son, Jason, as a little boy, his delighted squeals as he plopped down to a steaming plate of lasagna. The 4 of them gathered around the table, sharing stories that filled the air with laughter. The idea of changing that dynamic felt daunting, as if she was about to rewrite their shared history. But what did love mean if it came at the cost of her health? As she sliced a zucchini to incorporate into the dish, the knife trembled in her hand. What if the meal fell flat? A fizzle of doubt twisted within her. Perhaps cooking was simply that an act of love wrapped in flavors and tokens of affection. But was she truly showing love? Or was she merely passing down recipes steeped in denial? Ruth caught sight of herself in the kitchen window, an image of someone who was both frightened and fierce. She felt a small ember of determination ignite. Sam's words echoed in her mind. Evolution. Could she not evolve while still cherishing her family's history? She scrutinized every ingredient, contemplating not just their nutritional value, but the stories they told. Each zucchini reminded her of summer afternoons spent in the garden, planting seeds with Emily, who had become an excellent cook in her own right. If only I could be brave enough to show Emily the light, she thought, a rush of insights surging through her. Perhaps it was not just about changing textures and flavors, but also about strengthening bonds. Later that evening, as the smell of the lasagna wafted through the house, Ruth set the table with a sense of purpose. She carefully placed the utensils, each one a reminder of family tradition, a protective talisman of love. The dining table would still be theirs, full of stories and laughter. In her mind, she pictured opening the conversation, gently guiding her family into the evening with the promise of something new. Guests began to arrive, each face familiar yet filled with the expectations of the past. Her heart raced, but she met their smiles with her own, steadying her resolve. As Emily entered, Ruth felt a pang of pride at her daughter's face, glimmering with curious excitement. "What did you make tonight, Mom? It smells amazing." Ruth's heart softened. If her daughter could embrace her, perhaps she could also embrace this change. She took a deep breath, summoning the confidence she needed. "It's a new recipe, sweetheart. I hope you'll love it." The small gathering settled in, the conversation mingling with the scent of the dishes. Ruth could feel the weight of their attention as she served the lasagna, a newfound mixture of pride and trepidation humming within her. But just as she started to feel the warm glow of acceptance, Jason's brow furrowed at the first bite. "Mom, it's different." A hush fell, tension tightening around the table like a drum roll before a concert. The joy she had hoped for wavered, her heart racing as uncertainty gripped her once more. With every eye on her, Ruth realized she was standing at another crucial crossroads. The time had come to face the truth and share her struggle. But how? Would her family see her transformation as an effort toward life? Or would they recoil at the thought of leaving behind the meals steeped in their love? Ruth inhaled sharply, ready to reclaim her narrative and shift the conversation about love, health, and the future they all could still share. As she prepared to break the silence, she recognized the stakes of her revelation. Would they rally beside her, or would the mirage of nostalgia prove too powerful to entice them into the unknown? The answer hung in the air, a pivotal moment that would redefine not just dinner, but the essence of who they were. Ruth could feel the weight of the moment constricting around her, thick as the silence that enveloped the table. Every set of eyes seemed to magnify her doubts, each unspoken thought swirling in the air like smoke from the roast. Would they see her attempt at change as a betrayal or an invitation? Taking a breath that felt like it could ignite the stillness, Ruth shifted her focus outside the confines of their expectations. She was standing at a precipice, and this was her opportunity not just to disclose her health journey, but to craft a dialogue around change and resilience. She recalled Sam's encouragement to embody her evolution. Taking the plunge now would go against the tide of fear. "What I made tonight is different, but it's not just about the food," she began, choosing her words carefully. "It's about the love and care that goes into our meals. I've been working on my health, and I want to share that journey with you. This lasagna represents a shift to embrace better health without losing the joy of gathering together." Jason's expression shifted from skepticism to curiosity, the tension in the room vibrating with unfulfilled questions. Emily, who had been sipping her water, leaned in closer. "That's brave, Mom. It makes sense. We need to take care of ourselves, too." Ruth felt a tiny flicker of hope light up within her. The path was still unclear, but perhaps her first step was underway. The conversation unfolded with surprising grace. They began to share their own experiences with health, reminiscing about family gatherings that brought comfort and warmth. It wasn't about erasing their beloved dishes, but evolving them. As the evening progressed, Ruth's confidence grew. She watched her family interact, their initial hesitations melting into discussions about personal habits and new recipes they might try. Even if some resisted fully embracing her ideas, the dialogue opened doors. Barriers began to crumble. They began to talk about the balance between traditional meals and healthier alternatives, creating a shared vision framed by empathy rather than nostalgia. In that moment, Ruth learned something transformative about herself. Each conversation, every critique embraced, did not diminish the love they had cultivated around the table. Instead, it enriched their legacy. Daring to be vulnerable had not just opened a conversation about food, it had created space for vulnerability overall, for them to express fears, hopes, and willingness to evolve together. But as she reveled in this fragile excitement, a lingering anxiety still gnawed at Ruth. What if they slipped back into complacency? The recognition loomed around her like a specter, reminding her that transformation was a process, not a destination. Change required effort and commitment from everyone at the table, and how would she maintain this momentum beyond the comforting embrace of dinner? As dessert was served, Ruth glanced at her family. Each face carried a different reflection of their shared journey ahead. Instinctively, she understood that this was merely the first chapter of a much larger story, one that could guide them toward a lifestyle that celebrated health while honoring their rich traditions. What awaited them in the days to come? Would they collectively embrace the unknown or cling to the familiar? Ruth felt a thrill of uncertainty wash over her at the thought of all the upcoming meals they could navigate together, balancing health with heritage. Just as she prepared to share her vision for a family cooking night where everyone could contribute, the doorbell chimed unexpectedly, slashing through their intimate moment. It startled her, bringing an urgency that seemed to ripple through the air. Who had come calling? And how would this sudden interruption impact the fragile dialogue of change she had begun to nurture? Ruth paused, her heart racing, ready to navigate yet another unexpected twist in her journey towards health. Ruth's heart pounded as she approached the door, anticipation flooding her senses. Who could this be? An unexpected visitor had the potential to shift the atmosphere in the house, igniting her insecurities about the openness they had just begun to forge. She opened the door to reveal Mrs. Harper, the neighbor, brimming with her usual exuberance and a plate of freshly baked cookies. "Hi, Ruth. Just thought I'd bring you some treats." Mrs. Harper's warm smile contrasted starkly with Ruth's internal turmoil. Treats, especially ones laden with refined sugars and unhealthy fats, were now symbols of the very battle she was trying to wage with her family. "Thank you. That was thoughtful of you," Ruth managed to say, her voice barely concealing an involuntary tremor. The last thing she wanted was to offend the neighbor, but accepting the cookies felt like a step backward. "Oh, they're just a little something to sweeten your day," Mrs. Harper continued, oblivious to Ruth's internal struggle. "I remember when we all used to gather for bake sales, everyone's favorite." Her eyes twinkled at the memory, but instead of warmth, Ruth felt a tight knot of anxiety curling in her stomach. Ruth nodded, battling the pull of nostalgia that lured her into the realm of comfort food. Just as her family had begun to talk about changing traditions, here was a challenge at her doorstep. The cookies, the essence of those cherished gatherings, those sweet memories, seemed to mock her new path. "Would you like to come in for a moment?" Ruth asked, an obvious attempt to redirect the conversation. Once seated, Mrs. Harper began to share stories about her own struggles with health, punctuated by the sound of crinkling plastic as she playfully waved the cookie plate in front of Ruth. This was the opening Ruth and T expected. As the dialogue developed, Ruth realized Mrs. Harper wasn't simply a conserver of traditions. She too had undergone transformations. Through snippets of shared experiences, Ruth gleaned that even the most entrenched habits could shift with careful intention. Perhaps this was an opportunity to not only invite conversation about health within her family, but expand it to include those around her. "I've taken some steps too, mindful eating and embracing whole foods," Ruth shared, her voice resonating with newfound determination. Mrs. Harper leaned in, visibly intrigued. "Really? I've been trying to manage my sugar intake, but it's hard with all the family recipes calling out." And just like that, Ruth felt the tremors of anxiety subside, replaced by the vibrant energy of shared growth. It was a conversation of resilience, one that spiraled outwards. She articulated her plans for a family cooking night, envisioning an avenue for her children to bring in their own ideas while respecting their heritage. Mrs. Harper returned to her cookies, offering an alternative of healthier treats they could create together. The outside world melted away. Ruth felt charged by this exchange, yet deep down, threads of doubt began to weave their way back into her mind. Would these notions stick? Would they emerge from the cookie shadow or retreat back into familiar traditions? After saying goodbye to Mrs. Harper, Ruth took a moment to reflect on the lingering invitation for the neighbor to join their cooking night. She felt eager to engage, yet hesitant, unsure of how the mixture of new and old would manifest in practice. Her family had begun to express their willingness to change, but how far were they truly willing to push themselves? Ruth returned to the dining room where her family remained, plotting the next steps. What if they all joined hands and faced this new culinary venture together, blending modernization with cherished traditions? The desire to wield her newfound insights was palpable. Would they embrace the idea of exploration in their cooking practices or retreat into the safety of what they had always known? Ruth sensed another shift unfolding, but the path remained hazy and undefined, charged with possibilities. The echoes of change buzzed through her, hinting at the hard conversations yet to come. She needed to test her family's resolve and find out just how committed they were to transformation. As she glanced back to where her family gathered, her heart raced with equal parts excitement and trepidation. This was just the beginning, and with every change she initiated, new challenges would surface. Could they truly step outside the confines that health struggles had formed, or would they retreat into their comfort zones? Her heart whispered against the odds, daring to believe in the journey ahead. Ruth stood in the dining room, the air still thick with the remnants of Mrs. Harper's enthusiasm and the smell of cookies that lingered like a ghost. Alone with her family, the expectation loomed, palpable yet daunting. Her heart oscillated between hope and anxiety, and the tipping point lay within these walls, encased by the monitors of culinary tradition. Tonight, she announced, breaking the silence, we're going to have a cooking night. The words echoed off the walls like a challenge thrown into the depths of the ocean. Her family turned their heads, curiosity mingling with uncertainty. I think it's time we create something new, something healthier. The initial response was a mix of raised eyebrows and shifting looks, a subtle theater of resistance. Her son, Luke, slumped in his chair, a fork paused midair, while her daughter, Mia, glanced around as if gauging the reactions. What's wrong with how we cook now? We could just have cookies as dessert. Luke's tone was edged with sarcasm, a familiar defense mechanism. Ruth's pulse quickened, twisting at the sheer possibility of battling previous perceptions. What's wrong? She articulated through a clenched jaw. Isn't just about the cookies. It's the sugar, the fats, the traditions we cling to while suffering the consequences. With every word, she pressed deeper into her intent, her own fears lingering just behind the assertiveness. Mom, you know Grandma's recipes are special. You can't just rewrite them, Mia interjected, and Ruth sensed the tug of loyalty to their lineage, an emotional anchor that threatened to pull her back into complacency. Ruth inhaled, pulling from her well of resolve. But if we don't rewrite them, we're just going to continue the cycle of unhealthy eating. She felt the words hang in the air, suffused with their weight, while simultaneously shattering the comfort beneath their family dynamic. As the discussions escalated into a hesitant yet earnest debate, Ruth uncovered layers to her family's attachment. It wasn't merely about food, but nostalgia, shared memories draped in sugar and butter, the family comfort that had been their sanctuary. Yet she realized the high price of these comforts wasn't just their health, but their ability to evolve. Maybe we can adjust recipes, Mia suggested slowly, eyeing her mother with a faint glimmer of hope. We can still eat Grandma's favorites, but make them healthier. What if we made zucchini noodles instead of pasta? Or baked desserts? An unexpected wave of relief washed over Ruth. The invitations for change were slowly surfacing, but the challenge remained. How to transform their cooking into a realm of creativity without severing the ties to their roots. She could see the paradigm shift flicker in her children's eyes, yet apprehension tightened her own grip on the reins of transformation. You're right, Ruth replied, her voice steadier now, kindling a budding collaboration. let us adapt our favorites together. Each of us can bring a new twist to an old recipe. Eagerness lit up Mia's eyes, while Luke considered the notion, his expression softening. But we still get to make cookies eventually, right? Ruth smiled, a mix of tenderness and resolve simmering within her. Absolutely. But this time, we'll make them with whole ingredients. I'll lead the next dish, but I want you both involved. How about we pick one recipe to start? As they began to brainstorm ideas, Ruth felt the rush of exhilaration liberate her fears momentarily. There was a hidden strength in vulnerability, a power she had yet to fully harness within her family. Each recipe discussed became a brick on the road to transparency, binding their aspirations together in a freshly whetted appetite for change. Yet, as the meal plan unfolded, dark corners of doubt crept back in. Would this newfound collaboration withstand the pressures of routine? Or would impending habits unravel their progress the moment temptation knocked at their door again? Just when excitement began to build, Ruth felt her determination waver, bracing for the predictable pushback they had often resorted to. Would her family have the guts to face their habitual comforts this time? Ruth's internal chant morphed into a daunting question. What if they were to journey together beyond the limits of tradition? The tension thickened, knowing that tomorrow would bring new challenges, demanding persistence and strength that they had yet to explore. As uncertainty began to gnaw at her resolve, she wondered if perhaps the greatest test awaited her just around the corner, a confrontation with the unyielding walls of ingrained habits. Ruth stood before her kitchen counter the next day, the sunlight spilling in like a flood of possibilities. She had spent the previous night drafting a list of healthy ingredients and recipes, excitement mingling with trepidation. Today marked the beginning of their culinary transformation, and it bore the weight of expectation not just from her children, but from herself. The first recipe they had chosen, zucchini noodles with a homemade marinara sauce, felt like a leap of faith. Ruth laid out the ingredients, her hands trembling a little with anticipation. Can I really transform something so ingrained in their lives? She questioned. Would her family accept this new version of a beloved favorite, or would it be met with resistance? As Luke entered the kitchen, the initial reaction was a deep sigh. Zucchini instead of pasta? Really? His skepticism was sharp, and Ruth felt the tension return, an unwelcome reminder of the challenges that lay ahead. Trust the process, she replied, trying to inject enthusiasm into her voice. Once we add the sauce and season it right, it'll be just as good. With each slice of zucchini, she harnessed her own nervous energy. Mia joined them, her curiosity piquing as she peeked over her brother's shoulder. What if we add some spices? She ventured, like garlic or basil. The simple suggestion ignited a flicker of collaboration, and Ruth seized the moment. That is a great idea, Mia. Let us make it our own. The words filled the air with hope, but just beneath the surface, Ruth grappled with her own critique. What if they ruined it? She had elevated her expectations only to risk rejection. As they spiraled into a rhythm of slicing and mixing, every action challenged those unwarranted fears that had shackled her progress. Luke's reluctant participation transformed gradually into genuine engagement. He began experimenting with the seasonings. Ruth watched, a surge of pride swelling in her chest as the tension in the kitchen melted away. Luke even cracked a smile when he tasted the sauce, drawn in by a depth of flavor that reminded him of his grandmother's cooking. But soon, another wave of apprehension crashed over Ruth as Mia remarked, "What about the cookies? Are we still making them this week?" The dread of the sugary tradition clawed back insistently. Ruth sensed the familiarity of their cozy habits pulling them back, whispering the allure of normality. "We'll make cookies, just a healthier version." She grasped the chance to solidify their commitment to this change, yet her own mental gears hesitated. Would her children embrace a new baking approach, or would they rebel against the transition? When they finished preparing the dish, Ruth plated the zucchini noodles proudly, a vibrant bowl of spiraled green mixed with rich red sauce. She placed it on the table, heart pounding as she summoned her family to join her. As they sat down, the tension was palpable. Luke's fork hovered, Mia's eyes darted around the room, seeking approval. With a steady breath, Ruth took the first bite, letting the flavor wash over her, and deliberately chewed slowly, savoring every nuance. "Not bad," she managed to say, prompting a hesitant nod from Luke. Was that acceptance she saw? But before she could allow herself to revel in the success of the moment, the doorbell rang. It was Mrs. Harper, the neighbor and self-proclaimed culinary critic, holding trays of her famous cookies oven-fresh and decadent that Ruth's heart sank. The clash of tradition against transformation manifested itself before them, laying bare the fragility of her progress. As Luke's eyes lit up at the prospect of indulging in buttery treats, a storm of conflict swirled within Ruth. Would her family cling to their old comforts, or would they choose their newfound path? The scenario was unfolding like a trial, with her commitment to healthier cooking set against the powerful gravitational pull of their cherished past. The moment had arrived. Would she stand firm, or would she falter at the first real test of her resolve? As Ruth grappled with her next steps, she felt a shiver of anticipation for what lay ahead. Would they embrace change, or would the cookies offer an easier escape? The answer loomed, demanding resolve and clarity in a kitchen filled with both love and tradition. Ruth forced herself to smile at Mrs. Harper, but the weight of the occasion cracked the facade. The aroma of warm cookies wafted through the air, wrapping around her, thick with nostalgia and temptation. Luke's expression shifted. The initial curiosity about his mother's culinary experiment clouded over, replaced by delight at the treasure their neighbor had just delivered. Cookies? He echoed, disbelief painted on his face, almost like a child who thought they might be in a dream. Ruth felt her heart race, a primal instinct taking hold as she fought against the familiarity of indulgence. The old habits were clawing back into the fray, threatening to dismantle her brave initiative. "I'm glad you stopped by, Mrs. Harper," Ruth managed, her voice tinged with both gratitude and desperation. "But we're trying to shift our focus to healthier versions of our favorite foods." The words tasted foreign, like vinegar against honey, yet they held the potential for change. Mia, innocent and ever hopeful, chimed in, "But Mrs. Harper's cookies are the best." Her bright eyes lit up with an appeal that tugged at Ruth's heart, a reminder of all the joys wrapped in taste and tradition. Ruth's mind raced. The cookies were emblematic of so much a cherished family connection, laughter, memories. At that moment, she wrestled with the competing values of her children's happiness and her mission for change. Would embracing a healthy lifestyle mean abandoning all remnants of joy wrapped in sugar and flour? "Maybe we can have both," Ruth proposed, the thought stumbling into the conversation. "How about Mrs. Harper teaches us her recipe? We can dissect how to improve it together?" Mrs. Harper's face lit up, and Ruth felt a fleeting moment of hope surge within her. A collaborative pivot might ease the weight of rebellion filling the air. "I can definitely show you some swaps for healthier ingredients," the neighbor offered, enthusiasm radiating. Luke, still captivated by the cookie trays, hesitated at first. "I guess we could see how they compare." Despite his reluctance, the excitement of being part of a family project softened the edges of his initial resistance. They settled around the kitchen island, inspiration swirling as Mrs. Harper unveiled her secrets. Ruth observed with keen interest, absorbing techniques she had dismissed previously. How butter could be reduced, sugar mellowed with ripe bananas, and whole grains introduced to the mix. Yet, beneath this wave of discovery, doubts simmered. Would this actually work? Could they really navigate a healthy culinary landscape while still savoring the flavors that shaped their family's identity? She felt the pressure mounting, her resolve flickering under the bright light of culinary expertise. As they mixed and stirred, Ruth realized Mrs. Harper's presence helped alleviate some of the tension. Their laughter echoed, sharper than the sound of mixing bowls, chipping away at her fears. Perhaps this could be a bridge not just through food, but to deeper connections within her family. Mia, struck with a wild idea, suggested they incorporate flavors from their previous baking adventures, balancing their cherished memories with healthier choices. "What if we made zucchini chocolate chip cookies instead?" she proposed, eyes sparkling with mischief. The room filled with laughter, hopeful energy radiating within the kitchen walls. Ruth knew this was a pivotal moment, a turning point that demanded her focus on adaptability as an essential skill in her culinary journey. She stood tall, committed to experimentation and growth, embracing the uncertainty while fostering adventurous palates. Would they discover a new form of appreciation for wholesome versions of their favorites? Could she solidify her newfound strength even as she faced the specter of old habits? As the first batch of cookies emerged from the oven, golden brown and fragrant, Ruth felt a swell of anticipation. The texture held promise. The flavor notes were ripe for exploration. She looked at her family, gathered together in the warmth of the kitchen. Would they take that leap together, or would the familiarity of the traditional cookies tempt them back? The oven timer chimed, cutting through her thoughts. "Time to taste," she announced, heart pounding as it felt like a proverbial chasm had opened beneath them. Would they embrace the potential for transformation, or retreat back to a comforting past? She held her breath, then leaned closer to her family, ready to witness their responses as the horizon of possibilities grew just a little brighter. The first cookie vanished into Luke's eager mouth, his eyes widening as he chewed, contemplating the flavor explosion. Ruth watched closely. He was busy determining if they had struck the right balance. Her own mouth watered in anticipation of the taste test, yet an undercurrent of fear twisted in her stomach. Would this healthier creation be enough to satisfy his growing taste for sweetness? Mia was next, grabbing a cookie before Ruth could brace herself. With a tentative nibble, her face transformed into a portrait of joy. "This is amazing," she exclaimed, her enthusiasm undiluted. Laughter bubbled around the table, a pot of warmth bringing comfort amidst the simmering uncertainty. Ruth inhaled deeply, the aroma weaving into her lungs like a memory of childhood baking alongside her mother. But today, her resolve was challenged at every turn. As laughter filled the room, echoes of her own childhood crept into her mind. Was she merely recreating the past, or truly paving a new path? The weight of those thoughts hung heavy, battling against the lightness of the moment. Seeing her children's delight brought a warm glow to her heart. Yet the golden cookies were not merely a triumph of taste, but a manifestation of her struggle. Each ingredient she had mediated in for healthier alternatives felt like a small feat, yet her past still loomed large behind her, whispering questions that stirred unease. "They really are a hit, Mom," Luke said, chipping away at her uneasiness. "You know, I thought healthy stuff would taste bland, but I was wrong." His words hung heavy in the air, a profound validation that sent a jolt of pride through Ruth. Yet with that pride came hesitation. Had she veered too far from their beloved family traditions? Guilt washed over her, and she interjected, "I've been thinking about the balance we need. I definitely don't want you two to feel deprived of your favorites. We can do this responsibly." Her voice surfaced with an urgency that surprised her. It was a balance. She was grappling with a balance between transformation and nostalgia. Mia chimed in. "Could we switch out flavors for the next batch? I want to try pumpkin spice cookies." The youthful creativity radiating from her daughter acted as both balm and salve to Ruth's fraying internal dialogue. A hint of laughter brushed against Ruth's fear. Perhaps it could nurture their future, intertwining healthy adaptations with cherished traditions. But as they began to jot down other ideas, a realization grounded Ruth's thoughts. She could adapt, innovate, and still find satisfaction deep within their history. The preparations for the next batch began, but within Ruth was a growing awareness that navigating change often meant stepping into unknown waters. The thrill of inputting her children's creativity served as a roadmap right out of her fraught inner turmoil. Then, with flour-dusted hands, she caught sight of the mess they had created together. Not all moments in the kitchen would be tradition-bound perfection. They would sometimes be chaotic, filled with spillage and laughter and twinges of anxiety. But within that chaos was growth. "This is a great adventure we're embarking on," Ruth mused aloud, stirring together pumpkin puree and eggs. "Every cookie won't be a perfect replica of what we've known, and that's okay." Luke added, "Yeah, Mom. Adventure is better." His words struck a deeper chord within her, as Ruth felt a powerful surge of determination. This was not just about cookies. It was about embracing life in all its imperfect glory, about choosing to rewrite their recipe for happiness. As she pressed the dough onto the baking sheet, her heart raced with excitement and fear. Could this thrilling trajectory lead them to discover healthier lifestyles that filled their days with joy? Would they be able to leap from nostalgia and tradition into a new realm of taste and experience? "Let us see how these turn out," she said, trying to mask the anticipation brewing within her. As the timer ticked down, Ruth clenched her fists, caught in the tension of possibility anticipating their response as the cookie tray came out. In that moment, a familiar resolve began to bubble up inside her. This journey of transformation might hold surprises, yet unseen a raw potential for self-discovery as she leaned further into vulnerability with each culinary experiment. What awaited them in this unpredictable kitchen saga? Would they finally reconcile their cravings with newness? Would Ruth's new role as a creative culinary director of their family pay off? Or would the pull of nostalgia tighten its grip yet again? Both the oven and her heart ticked down toward the unknown. She braced for impact as the warm tray of cookies emerged, uncertain of what awaited her on the opposite side of this delicious experiment. The aroma permeated the air as the cookies cooled on the rack, a tempting promise of rewards waiting to unfold. Ruth's heartbeat echoed within her, an exhilarating reminder that she was creating something new amid the comforting fragments of her past. The golden brown cookies radiated warmth, not just in temperature, but in the hope they represented. After all the flickering doubts, this was her first tangible step toward a lifestyle redefined not just for her, but for her family. As Mia and Luke eagerly reached for another cookie, Ruth felt a surge of pride at their unabashed enthusiasm. Each bite her children savored felt like a victory. Theirs were not merely declarations of delight, but affirmations that she could bridge the gap between tradition and innovation. The moment felt ripe with promise for something larger, something beyond these delectable offerings. But even as joy bubbled inside her, the shadows of anxiety crept back. Her mind flickered to the social gatherings, where their previous sugary treats had always been beloved staples. What would friends and family say? Would her attempts at this health-conscious approach receive scorn, or be met with acceptance? It was almost as if she was standing before an audience, bearing not just cookies, but her very belief system, daring to expose vulnerabilities that lingered beneath the surface. "Can we make these for the Johnsons' get-together next week?" Luke asked, gleaming with enthusiasm. His eyes sparkled with excitement, unaware of the turmoil threading through his mother's heart. "Absolutely. But we'll need to experiment with flavors to impress them," Ruth replied, forcing a playful smile. Experimentation wasn't merely fun, it was a mandate transforming fear into opportunity, even if reality loomed with potential judgment. Mia added, "What about a chocolate mint version?" Her enthusiasm inspired Ruth to consider other ingredients, to venture into a diverse realm of flavors. But it tugged at her simultaneously. Was she straying too far from who she was, from what she had always baked? The pull of nostalgic traditions felt both a comfortable refuge and a heavy anchor. The idea of diverse flavors took shape in her mind. Ruth knew what lay ahead required more than just culinary prowess. It demanded emotional agility and courage. Each recipe was no longer just a cooking assignment. It was symbolic of her ongoing transformation. She wasn't just creating cookies. She was advocating for a new legacy. Moments of self-doubt flashed in and out, like fleeting shadows. Would these healthier iterations translate into a sense of approval from her peers, akin to the pride she felt in her children's smiles? The internal battle rattled her. She took a deep breath, letting the exhale that followed draw out her anxiety. "Okay, team, let us brainstorm a plan." Asking for help meditated her unease. "We'll try these new flavors and share our favorites, but everyone must taste test. We need to be ready for any criticism. Patience is key." Luke's thoughtful frown only bolstered her resolve. "Right, like when we tried that spicy pasta dish and Mom didn't like it at first. That's exactly it, Luke." See, a flicker of hope ignited. If we can embrace change together, we can inspire others to do the same. The importance of collective resilience illuminated her path forward. As Ruth gathered ideas and jotted down notes, she felt an empowering pull. The journey ahead was fraught with challenges and uncertainties, yet that same tension mimicked the thrill she experienced in the kitchen. She was ready to not just cook, but to confront her fears, challenge her creative boundaries, and, with her children by her side, concoct a new narrative. Let us experiment with flavors throughout the week. We've got a lot of work ahead of us, she declared, a rush of adrenaline fueling her words. Yet deep within her, the question lingered. What if the exploration didn't yield the approval she so desperately sought? What if the unfurling legacy turned into an unexpected failure? That uncertainty loomed as potent as the sweetness. Wafting around them, Ruth pressed her lips together, a decision crystallizing amidst the swirling chaos. This wasn't merely about baking. It was about instilling courage to counter rejection and embracing individuality. Her identity as a mother and culinary innovator would soon collide, leading to challenges layered with complex emotions like that first batch of cookies. She would rise and fall, redefining what it meant to transform. With the air thickening with possibilities, Ruth concluded, "The time has come to test our new recipes and perhaps my courage." As the evening approached, the clamor of activity settled, each child's laughter mingling with her resolutions. The warm kitchen transformed into an incubator of innovation. What awaited them in this daring culinary adventure? Would they attract joy, or would doubt relinquish the sweetness they so cherished? Only the forthcoming trials and flavors would reveal the truth that Ruth yearned to taste. Ruth stood before the stove, sunlight streaming through the window, illuminating the kitchen's cheerful chaos. Ingredients were scattered across the counters, evidence of a week filled with experimentation and shared laughter. Zucchini muffins and ginger-spiced oatmeal cookies lined the counter, each batch a testament to their transformative journey. As the children tasted, Ruth felt the weight of her previous fears begin to lift. They were not just healthier meals. They were creations infused with togetherness and alive with new flavors. The evening of the Johnsons' gathering had finally arrived. It felt almost ceremonial, as if Ruth was carrying the essence of her journey to the altar of shared traditions. The scent of her revamped cookie recipes mingled with the nostalgia that filled the air, an aromatic symbol of resilience and renewal. Her heart beat with a mixture of excitement and anxiety. This was an opportunity to showcase their evolved culinary philosophy to friends who had known them when nostalgia reigned supreme. As the doorbell chimed, Ruth felt a surge of determination. She opened the door to greet the familiar faces of her neighbors. Their cheerful laughter and genuine inquiries warmed her heart, but deep inside, an unease lingered. Would they embrace her creations, or would they mourn the loss of the traditional flavors they had always cherished? Ruth's eyes fell on the full platter of colorful cookies, boasting a proud array of flavors: chocolate mint, pumpkin spice, and zucchini chocolate chip. Each one represented the hard work of her family coming together, not merely cooking, but creating a legacy of health and love, woven with the threads of tradition. As the guests reached for the cookies, she held her breath momentarily. "Wow, these look amazing, Ruth," Mrs. Johnson exclaimed, her eyes wide with delight. As she sampled a chocolate mint cookie, her expression shifted to surprise and approval. Who knew you could replace sugar with natural sweeteners and still have such rich flavors? One by one, her neighbors expressed their admiration, and Ruth felt pride blossom in her chest. Each positive remark was an affirmation not just of her baking skills, but of her deliberate choice to evolve their family's story. They were shifting the narrative, honoring the traditions of their past, while stepping boldly into a healthier future. "Your family has really embraced a new way of cooking, Ruth," Mr. Johnson commented, savoring a piece of the zucchini muffin. "It's a refreshing take on favorites we've all enjoyed for years." Ruth couldn't suppress her smile as she engaged with her friends. With each bite they took, her heart swelled, grounding her newfound confidence. The approval of her peers transformed her initial anxiety into exhilaration. She was not betraying their history. She was enriching it. During the gathering, Ruth also found her voice in discussions about health and nutrition. As neighbors began to share their own stories of transformation and open struggles, Ruth guided the conversation toward an inspiring dialogue about healthy adaptations. She recognized the power of vulnerability and the strength of community. It wasn't merely about exchanging cookie recipes. It was an opportunity to foster a communal evolution toward better health. "I've realized that changing our recipes doesn't mean we forget our roots. It means we cherish them even more by allowing them to grow," Ruth said, as she engaged with the crowd. Her words rang with authenticity, capturing the essence of her journey. Later that evening, as she cleaned up the kitchen, Ruth felt a serene satisfaction enveloping her. Preparing for this gathering had demanded courage, vision, and innovation, but ultimately, it had proven her capacity to adapt without losing who she was. She had achieved not just culinary satisfaction. She had transformed as a mother and a leader within her family, instilling values in her children that would echo through generations. Her children, who were once hesitant, had now taken active roles in advocating for better choices. They had turned creative cooking into a family affair, one that danced between the joyful memories of their past and an exciting future full of possibility. No longer defined by fear of change, Ruth had conquered her reservations and arrived at a newfound clarity. Love is flexible. Just like recipes can be yes, she placed the final dish in the refrigerator. Her phone buzzed. A message from Emily popped up, brightening her heart. "Can't wait for our next cooking night, Mom. You inspire me." Ruth smiled, a wave of contentment washing over her. She had laid a new foundation, and in doing so had invited her family deeper into a journey of health, joy, and connection. With her heart full and her spirit resilient, Ruth stepped into the night, the moon shining brightly above. This was not just the conclusion of a single story, but the beginning of a vibrant legacy, a journey that embraced evolution while still cherishing the past. She felt confident about the adventures yet to come, ready to bridge the gap between what had been and what could be, a culinary odyssey woven not just in taste, but in the very essence of love. Don't let this moment of inspiration pass without taking action. You need to subscribe now to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm, and comment your reactions and theories about this amazing conclusion. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this transformation. Don't wait even one more second to share. True fans of personal overcoming stories understand the importance of supporting the channel through these actions.